Hi guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm Dr. Lynda Cramer. Please excuse my voice today because I haven't been well all week, but today we have the amazing Suzanne here to share with you the journey that she's been on in the spiritual world. So thank you so much for having to be in here today, Suzanne. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm great. I'm great, thank you.
Yeah,
And
so
you're not
let's
feeling too well, but hopefully you'll get better.
Yeah, I've had this all week, so we'll get there, okay? So
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
make this about
Mhm.
you, Suzanne. Let's start at
Okay,
the very beginning. Now, you just mentioned off camera that you started this when you were about 12. So what happened when you were
right.
12?
So roughly when I was laying in bed and just out of nowhere, I started feeling this buzzing through my whole body. And then I became completely paralyzed. I could not move at all. And I started freaking out. So I was trying to break out of my body. And then real high pitch ringing in the ears. And then after a few seconds, I guess, I started floating up to the ceiling, to the point where my nose was at the ceiling. And, I was scared to death. So I didn't know what the heck was going on. So I fought it. And then after, it felt like an hour, but after a while, I zapped back into my body. So nothing happened. Um, Other than that, I talked to my mother about it the next day. And the only words she had for me was basically telling her boyfriend, see, I told you I wasn't crazy, you know. She told me, look up astral projection. So I started reading books on it, but it didn't make any sense to me. And then it started happening more frequently, and I talked to people about it. And um, I don't know if I mentioned this. I used to, when I was a kid, I used to hang out at a water ice place, because they had Pac-Man and Mrs. Pac-Man there. And basically, it was called PTL, Praise the Lord. So the people that worked there were on a mission to, get the kids, under on the Jesus bandwagon, basically. So I felt comfortable with them. I didn't really have anybody to talk to. My parents and I were never close. Everything's a mess with that. So I mentioned it to them. And, eventually I was flying around and stuff and I was telling them about it. And they told me that the devil was in me and that I needed an exorcism. And that was my problem. So I went through it. I went to their house one day and there was 30 people there and they all laid hands on me and tried to get the devil out of me, right? Came home, it didn't work. So eventually I started seeing dead people just hanging out in my room, you know. And again, I was so young that I was scared to death, scared to death. But eventually, I guess, like over time, it started happening so much that I just was kind of like, oh, you know, I wasn't scared anymore. So I started getting better at the astral projection. People had said to me, fly out your window, come up with a place you want to go to, set an intention and go, and so I would fly out my window and go all over the place. This is so I'm 58 now. So this has been going on since I was,
Sure.
almost 13 years old. Yeah. So I've gotten better at it, but I really have never perfected it because I didn't know I could. I had no
Yeah,
idea. I had no idea that I actually had the free will, to go somewhere specific
sure.
and stuff like that. So a funny story, back in 2016, my husband and I were renting an apartment somewhere, and I came out of my body and floated into the living room of this apartment. And I saw a dog, a cat, a man reading a newspaper, a younger man, a baby in the background, and this woman. And it was crazy because it was almost like a black and white scene, but where they add those extra pale colors like the pale blues and the pale purples. Sorry. Anyway, nobody said anything, and I kind of floated over to the woman, and she was ironing. And she had on a long, well, not a long dress, a white dress with what do you call it? What the heck's that called? Apron,
Yep.
a pale blue apron. And she had real short curly hair and mauve painted lips. The details were crazy. And she was ironing. And she looked over at me and she started telling me everybody's name. And in my
Mhm.
mind, I was like, remember this, remember this, remember this,
Mhm.
And she told me that we were speaking telepathically, and she told me her name and all that, and that was kind of it. And I went back in my body. I wrote everything down, asked my
Wow.
aunt about it. She came up with different ideas of who it could be. But
Mhm.
anyway, the funny thing is, 5 years later, I found out I did a DNA test, and I found out that my dad wasn't my dad. And when I got to meet family members were pulling me from, the DNA place saying, "Hey, I'm your sister. Hey, I'm your brother." 10 of them, 10 siblings.
Wow.
And then yeah, so when I found out who my real father was and his name and my grandmother's name and my brother's name and the baby's name, they were the names that this woman gave me. And then
Wow.
when I saw pictures of them, they were the exact picture, exactly what they looked like in my out of body. So I guess, they were letting me know, you
Yeah.
know, for a
Yeah.
long time. So, I mean, I haven't seen anything in about 6 months. It kind of slowed down. I talked to you about that.
Mhm.
But but yeah, and as far as being psychic and all that, I do know stuff all the
Yeah.
time. I know stuff. I
Wow.
joke about it. I start to write stuff down now just to keep score. I'm like, I got that again. I got it again.
Yes.
It's really
And
cool. I love
and
it.
you've written yourself a book. So let's have a look at your
Oh,
book. Yeah. Bring
yeah,
that
yeah.
up and let's show the people your book. What's it called, Suzanne?
So this is called The Parents,
Yeah.
and it's about breaking generational cycles. And it also goes into detail about my spiritual experiences and
Mm-hmm.
the out of body and all that,
Sure.
because it's a very raw book. It starts off with uh, discussing abuse and trauma from the parents,
Mm-hmm.
and their parents and their parents and their parents, you know what I mean? And the cycles that we keep repeating, the
Yeah.
abuse cycles, and that book I wrote as soon as I found out about my real father because I always knew
Yes.
it, and
Yeah.
I just couldn't figure out what it was that I couldn't figure it out. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that whole DNA experiment unleashed a lot of stuff, and gave me
Absolutely. It would have.
the gumption to write. Yeah, so
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your story. Okay.
oh,
Please
thanks.
send
Yeah,
me the link to your book because I'm going to put that in
okay,
the description below. But we've got two more people in the waiting room, so I'm going to pause now.
okay, great.